Sometime around December, it started happening.
Round Table's new stuffed crust crispy pepperoni and bacon pizza.
Every time we watched a YouTube video or anything, we would find that Round Table pizza ad for the stuffed crust, bacon, pepperoni pizza, and every time it came on, my husband would give me this longing look like, we have to go, we have to go, we have to try it. So I decided I would have some fun with it and not only take us to Round Table to try that pizza that kept haunting us and taunting us, but that we would try to recreate that same pizza at home and see how much cheaper it is. So step one, we went to Round Table. It is finally happening. We are going to Round Table Pizza. Ooh, special. Actually, it is kind of special for us. We don't go out much. We don't eat out much. But after seeing the commercial taunting us for the last couple months.
With hardwood smoked bacon, crispy mini pepperonis stuffed with 3 kinds of real California cheese.
We're finally having the bacon pepperoni pizza at its promotional price of, I think it's like $20 or so. It's only good for that, like for the next few days. You excited?
Pizza.
We have arrived.
Here it is in all its glory.
Thoughts?
Pizza.
Burning me. You're right, pizza.
Okay, so I could have saved $2 if we didn't eat it here, but I wanted to eat it here because this is our special time out on a date.
Okay, yes, the cats are cute.
So we ate exactly half the pizza, which is a good benchmark to show how much pizza I need to make.
But yeah, it was good. It was Round Table pizza. We both kind of grew up on. Did you grow up on Round Table?
No, because Round Table was the expensive stuff,
one,
so
yeah.
We didn't get that.
Yeah, like we would always, like, Round Table was a special treat in my household. We splurged. It was like, ooh, Round Table, special fancy pizza. You know, even though it's chain pizza, it's still the best of the chain pizza, so, and the most expensive, so it was a special treat for us. But I grew up with it. I really like it better than the other chain pizzas. I particularly like the sauce. We were talking about this in the restaurant. He doesn't like how they are heavy-handed on their oregano.
Like, I don't hate it, but it's definitely not my favorite.
Yeah, I like it. Like, I keep trying to get my home sauce actually to taste more like it, actually, and he said he likes my sauce better. So I don't know, maybe I'll just make my sauce. But yeah, they say it's 3 different California cheeses. Wow, I look really white. Hello from Ghost Sarah. Oh wait, when I do that, I'm not white. Okay, I'll just be white. Anyway, 3 California cheeses. I don't know which 3 California cheeses it is. We could probably do a little research and find that out. We think mozzarella definitely, and then probably a hard cheese like Asiago or Parm, and then like he was guessing fontina, or like it could be Asiago and Parm and mozzarella, we don't know. And then crispy pepperonis that curl up, not as many as we'd like. And there was a good amount of bacon, but it wasn't evenly distributed, as often happens in a pizza place. And yeah, very cheesy, very stuffed crusty. Their crust is better than my crust, but they're a pizza place with really professional high heat ovens, so I don't think I can really fix that unless I get a pizza oven that cooks things at like 1,000 degrees. Oh yeah, and we got it at the promotional price today for $19.99. Paid $2 in tax because we ate it at the place. I guess we got our drinks for free. Either he was just nice and gave us free drinks, or like it was included.
Or he just forgot to.
Yeah, I don't know. But in any case, I mean, I guess I could say it cost us $22 to eat in the restaurant and we got free drinks. So the goal is to make a large sized, or the equivalent, stuffed crust, pepperoni and bacon pizza with 2 drinks for less than $22. I think that will be very easily achievable. After we had the pizza for our very important research, it was time to see about recreating it ourselves. Now, I make pizza for us pretty much once a week. It's actually a very common occurrence in our home, so this wasn't going to be too much of a challenge culinary wise for me, but I'm going to show you guys how I made the pizza. So what you see here is all of the ingredients that I'm going to need to make this pizza. Let's just go through them real quick.
We've got a giant block of mozzarella, some fontina cheese, and some Parmigiano Reggiano. So in the original Round Table Pizza, it's a 3-cheese pizza, and they say real California cheese. They don't really specify which cheeses, but we assume mozzarella is one of them, and we thought fontina and parm would be really good. I decided to one-up them, even though California cheeses are delicious. I should know, I'm from California. These are imported from Italy, so these are like even better. They're like really nice brands of cheese. Even better probably than what Round Table was using, so we're one-upping them there. I also just have some generic bacon. This is not like fancy bacon, not super expensive, but it's also not the cheapest bacon. It's pretty much middle-of-the-road bacon from Fred Meyer. This is just a regular run-of-the-mill generic can of crushed tomatoes from Winco. And this is some King Arthur bread flour. They do have really good flour, so making good flour in this. And this is amazing olive oil. It is extra virgin olive oil from California. It's actually a local brand from back when I lived in Sacramento. I met the farmer at the farmer's market in Sac, and then I started seeing the olive oil in grocery stores. And the last time I was in California, I bought this. It's expensive, but it's so worth it. It's such good olive oil. And then I also got this, you know, generic Hormel stick pepperoni. It has to be the stick kind for it to curl up like it does on the Round Table pizza, so I got the stick kind. This is nothing special. So basically I splurged mostly on these 2 cheeses, the flour and the olive oil. And then we also have, this is like half a very tiny can of tomato paste that was in my freezer. I used the first half of the can in some other recipe, and rather than buy a whole new can and use part of it for this recipe and then have another half of a leftover can, I decided I would use what I already had in the freezer. And then this is just some garlic that I already had, and it's already starting to sprout, so I really need to use it. And these are also spices that I already had from bulk section of Winco. We have Italian seasoning, red pepper flakes, and this salt actually is, if you saw my $40 grocery month video, this is the salt that I had left over. Actually, I used a little bit of what was left over since I finished that month, but this is like still what is left over from that month, and so I'm going to use some of that in this pizza. And last but not least, we have some active dry yeast, which I already had. So I got most of these ingredients, the new stuff, at Fred Meyer. It is a generic, all-purpose one-stop shop in the Pacific Northwest area only. So it's kind of like Target on steroids. It's like a huge grocery store and clothing store and gardening store and everything, basically. Target on steroids is really the best way I can explain Fred Meyer. It's great, really good value, really cheap ingredients, but they also have some good stuff there as well that's more expensive. So I figured Fred Meyer is a good kind of middle of the road place to get a lot of these ingredients. All of what I got at Fred Meyer in this trip for this pizza was cheese and meats. Everything else I already had in my pantry, and I didn't want to bother like buying new ones just for this video. So I looked up the prices on the remaining things, and I'm going to include those prices as well. I'm not going to use 100% of everything that I bought either, so I'm not going to charge myself, like I'm not going to incorporate the whole cost of the entire block of cheese, for example. So you have to start with water that is between 105 and 115 degrees, and this water is 105. I highly recommend this Thermapen, by the way, and I have a link in the description if you want one. They're expensive, but cheap thermometers like this don't really work that well, and this is a really good thermometer. Anyway, I've got 2 1/4 teaspoons of the yeast in here, and I'm just pouring the warm water in there. This is a good test to see if your yeast is alive. If it starts frothing and bubbling in a few minutes, it's alive. If it doesn't, it's dead, and you need to start all over again with better yeast. Alright, it is about 5 minutes later, and I don't know how well you can see this, but it is definitely frothing a little bit, the yeast, so that means it is definitely alive. It pretty much always is. Now I'm going to add between 3½ and 4 cups of flour, and I'm going to start with just 1. Find it's easier to incorporate everything if you start with a really wet sponge of only some of the flour. Incidentally, it's much better if you make this dough a few days in advance and let it ferment in your refrigerator before you actually make pizzas out of it. So I'm going to be making one of the pizzas today, and then I'm going to be making another pizza. This dough is a double recipe, so I'm going to be making the other pizza in a couple days, so the second pizza will probably be a lot better. If there are some lumps in here, don't worry, because when we mix it and knead it later by hand, these will all get worked out much better. One more cup of flour. And you don't need to use bread flour. I'm actually the wrong person to ask on like the absolute best way to make pizza dough. I just use the Joy of Cooking's, you know, basic pizza dough recipe. I'm sure there are better ways of making pizza dough than what I'm doing right now. But just don't let making your dough from scratch intimidate you. It's actually not that hard. You don't have to be as precise as all the recipes say. It's all about fine-tuning. Now that's looking nice and spongy. So I've added 2 cups of flour at this point, and now I'm going to add 2 teaspoons of salt, as well as a couple tablespoons of this really good extra virgin olive oil. And I'm just going to eyeball this because I don't like wasting olive oil on my measuring instruments. So I'll just pour it directly in and not dirty up my measuring spoons. You can add sugar to your pizza dough. You can also like not add oil at all. I've seen some recipes not have oil in their pizza doughs, so you don't have to add either of those things that I just added. But you do have to add salt, otherwise your dough will not taste very good at all. Okay, and at this point I'm just going to add flour, between 1 and 2 more cups of flour until it's a good consistency. And this is where factors like the humidity of the place where you live and the kind of flour that you use, because different brands of flour hydrate differently, that will affect exactly how much flour you use. So it's really important to add less flour than the recipe says, and then add a little bit at a time until it's the right consistency. And you notice I'm using a spatula. I find that a spatula is the best way to mix bread dough because it's really nice for scraping these like dried bits off of the edge as you're working, and it's just easier to incorporate everything. But eventually you have to dump it out and use your hands, and I'm getting pretty close to that point. So I've got another half to a whole cup of flour or so to add, and at this point I'm switching to my clean hands. As you can see, the dough is still quite sticky, and actually sticky dough is good in bread making. You want it to be on the moist side, you don't want it to be super, super dry, so don't be too eager to add too much flour. And I like to try to keep one hand clean and the other hand floury. Ah, this dough feels so good. I don't have enough space in my tiny apartment kitchen for one of those stand mixer KitchenAid things. They definitely would make life a lot easier when it comes to bread making. And it's something that down the line, if I ever live in a house that has a kitchen that's much bigger than this tiny apartment kitchen, I would like a KitchenAid. But in the meantime, you know, don't let not having a stand mixer or bread maker stop you from making bread dough. It's quite easy. So when it comes together like this, you're going to be tempted to just stop and say, okay, cool, I'm done with my dough. But this is where you need to start kneading it. It's still pretty sticky at this point. There's still some stuck bits to the board, and there's still some stuck bits on my hand. But it's a certain kind of tacky sticky where it does release from my hand. Even though it is sticking and leaving behind some stick, it is releasing. And as counterintuitive as it sounds, the more you knead it, sometimes the less sticky it becomes. Dough is interesting that way. So it's becoming stickier at the moment, so I think I do need to add a little bit more flour. But don't be tempted to add too much flour at this point. You want to just knead and knead and knead this dough for 10 whole minutes. Set a timer if you think you're going to get frustrated and stop early. Your goal is to knead this dough until it is a little bit sticky to the touch, but not like this kind of sticky where it's like leaving behind stick on the cutting board and on your hands. A good sign that it's at the right level of hydration is that all of this stuff on your claw-like hand just naturally comes off. It sticks off back into the dough and your hand is clean. That's kind of a good sign for when you know that your dough has reached like proper hydration. But yeah, when in doubt, really just set your timer for 10 minutes. So once it gets to a point where it's behaving a little better and not just like sticking to the cutting board in my hand, I use both hands. And notice it's not really sticking to my clean hand. That's a good sign. This hand is still pretty dirty. But again, as I knead it more and more and more, the stickiness of this block of dough will, see, just now, I don't know if you saw that, but it just now just released some of the sticky dough off of my hand and into the blob of dough. I used this bench scraper to scrape off the bits that were stuck to the cutting board. And if that happens again, just do that again. I might need to still add a little bit more flour, but I think at this point I'm ready to just knead and knead and knead and knead until we are the right kneadedness. So the dough is done now. It's been 10 minutes. It feels really nice, smooth, a little sticky to the touch, but it doesn't stick on my hands. Look at how nice and clean my hand is now. It all came off into the dough. And this is the remainder of the 4 cups of flour that I didn't use, but I'll use that to roll out the pizza later. So now all that remains is to oil this bowl a little bit. Teaspoon of oil. Get it all up all over the sides. I like to use the blob of dough to spread the oil around. And then I flip the dough over, oil side up, and what I like to do to proof it is I cover it with a towel, and then, because it is winter and it's kind of cold in our apartment, what I do is I turn the oven on to warm, and I notice when the oven is on, this part of my stovetop gets warm. So it's a good way to simulate, if you're lucky and have a proofing setting on your oven or have a proofing drawer or something, or if it's sunny outside, you can do that. But if it's winter, like it is for me, and there's no nice warm place to proof it, do this. So the dough has to do its initial rise for an hour and a half. So while that's happening, that's a really good opportunity for us to make our sauce. And I'm also going to pre-cook the bacon for the pizza. I don't want to put raw bacon on the pizza, so I'm going to chop that up and cook it part of the way through in advance. So in here I have a tablespoon of that really nice oil and about 1/3 of the 50-cent head of garlic. Chopped, just, the cloves were pretty big, so I just kind of halved or thirded them. I'm going to puree the sauce later, so they don't need to be pureed or anything. And I'm going to very gently on low cook these cloves a little bit in the oil. So I've decided I'm just going to use half of this entire thing of bacon per pizza. I'm making 2 pizzas total, so that works out nicely. We felt that one of the ways it could have been improved upon was it was really skimpy on the bacon at Round Table, so I'm adding 8 pieces of bacon to each pizza, and I'm just going to cut them up before cooking them.
What you got there, Hermione? Yeah? Uh-huh. Hi.
So I'm just cooking this bacon on pretty low. I just want to render out a lot of this fat. By the way, the fat I'm going to save. I save it in little mugs in the fridge, and I use it to cook potatoes and such. It's delicious, so score. Okay, this garlic is starting to get fragrant. Lovely. I'm gonna add the tomatoes. I was actually supposed to add the tomato paste first. Oops. Oh well, I'm gonna add the tomato paste now. The reason you're supposed to add the tomato paste first is that it creates the Maillard reaction a little bit if you saute it in the oil first, but oh well. The tomato paste also, even if you don't use the Maillard reaction and brown it, it will add some extra flavor, extra sweetness, and it'll also thicken the sauce a little bit. But anyway, we're just gonna simmer this a little bit on low for about ½ hour to an hour until it is the right consistency. And I'm just going to season it before that with pepper flakes, Italian seasoning, and I'm going to hold off on the salt until the very end because canned tomatoes tend to taste salty already. But for now I added a tablespoon of Italian seasoning and a teaspoon of red pepper flakes. And again, we'll let this just very gently cook until it is not very watery at all. And the bacon is rendering nicely. And the sauce is bubbling and simmering away. Still quite moist, so I need to give this at least another 20 minutes, probably 30 minutes. And after 30 minutes, our dough will have been rising for an hour. It needs to rise for an hour and a half But what I like to do is rise it on the stovetop for an hour only, and then for the remaining half hour off the stove, and you'll see why. Okay, the bacon is right where I want it, slightly crispy, but still with some room to go. So I'm just gonna let that drain so our pizza won't be as greasy. Meanwhile, the sauce is coming along nicely. There's still plenty of moisture to go. So the sauce is nicely reduced. I can turn it off and puree it. And I'm going to move this dough now because it has been proofing for an hour. I'm going to move it to the cutting board because what I'm going to do now is I have a pizza stone in the oven and it has to preheat for about 45 minutes before I put the pizza on it. So I'm preheating it now at the highest setting my oven can go to, which sadly is only 500 degrees. That's something that Round Table has over us. They have a much better oven, but what can you do? It is an hour and a half later and it has risen so nicely. Punch it down. And I'm just going to knead this briefly just to make sure there are no giant air pockets and everything is kind of together so that I can then divide this dough in half because this dough is going to be for 2 pizzas. And I'm just going to kind of eyeball it. So this ball of dough I'm going to put back in the fridge and save for the next pizza in a couple days. And this ball of dough I'm going to let rest for about 15 to 20 minutes before I roll it out and put my toppings on. So this giant block of mozzarella is 32 ounces. I think I'm going to use a quarter of it in this pizza. We'll see. Since I'm going to be combining this with 2 more cheeses, and a lot of this is going to be for the stuffed crust part, I think that should work. So I've cut about half, or a little more than half of the bit that I cut off into these strips. This is for the stuffed part of the stuffed crust, and then the rest of this I grated just to sprinkle all over the pizza. And now I need to deal with this fontina and figure out how much I need. I already have a little decent amount of grated mozzarella for the top of the pizza, but I'll need... I'll start with a quarter of this fontina and see how that feels, and I still have Parmesan as well. Yep, so that is a quarter of the block of fontina. That looks like a good amount. I'm just going to add it to the mozzarella plate. Really, the cheese is the main part of this pizza where I'm splurging. If you really wanted to save some money and do a cheaper version of this, you could use like cheaper cheese. Or just all mozzarella and don't bother with fontina and imported Parmesan. Speaking of imported Parmigiano, so since I bought this wedge, I already used a little bit of it. I used 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It looks like I used about maybe a 1/6 of it already to factor that in when I'm calculating the prices. So I think probably about this much should do for 1 pizza. So I'm going to be using probably about 2/5 of this entire block of Parmigiano for both pizzas. So there's all of our Parmigiano. This is mostly going to be to sprinkle around the crust. So yeah, we have all of our toppings assembled and I pureed the sauce, and it's a lot of sauce. This is way more than enough for 2 pizzas. I might use a quarter of it per pizza, if even that much, but we'll see. And we are about ready to assemble now. So now I'm going to do my best to roll this out into a nice circle. And it springs back on itself, as you can see, but you just have to kind of be patient. And with this pizza, since it's going to be stuffed crust, I need to roll it out larger than I want my pizza to be, because when I put the cheese in, it's going to be like that, and the whole circle is going to be smaller. Another lovely time-honored technique you can use is to stretch it this way with your knuckles. It can get away from you pretty easily and pretty quickly if you're not careful. It's not uncommon for my pizzas to not be perfectly round, but that's intentional. It's artisanal pizza. Just say things are rustic or artisanal and you will be excused from anything. Alright, if you're like me and you've dropped pizzas tragically on the floor when trying to transfer them on and off of your pizza stone, I highly recommend using parchment paper. It makes the whole process so much easier. I usually don't make my pizzas this big, and it's kind of for a reason. It's really hard to manipulate the dough when it is this big and when your cutting board is this small and when you're in a tiny apartment kitchen. All right, now we've got it on our parchment paper. Time to sauce you up. I pureed the sauce, and let's see, I think I'm going to use about 1/4 of it, but we'll see. Now, Round Table lays their sauce on thicker than we usually do. And I'm not going all the way out to the edge because I need room to fold this over to stuff that crust. Yeah, I was right. I used about 1/4 of that sauce. God, if even. Now the fontina and mozzarella. Cameraman, what you thinking?
Pizza.
Hey, pizza man, you've actually done this before. Do you recommend I stuff the crust now and then add the rest of the toppings?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I think I should do that anyway just because... Okay, so if I do that, then I...
Back in the day, in fact, I think they did the stuffed crust before even adding the sauce.
Oh, before even sauce. That makes sense, actually. I failed. Round Table needs to fire me. At this point, I'm actually slightly... Okay, I do have enough. I was worried I wasn't going to have enough of these. Okay, looks like I do indeed have like 1 extra, which I can then just kind of break apart and put on here. So, this lovely technique. And then I press it, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Ooh. So, cameraman, i.e. my husband, has been trying to get me to do this for a while. First, it was like just I'd never even had stuffed crust pizza, like at all. That was the first barrier to cross. And now it's like making stuffed crust pizza at home. Yeah, I can see why you would do the stuffed crust part first. And then sauce and toppings and everything, because it can get a little messy. And I'm worried that my cheese is going to ooze out of my crust.
Might happen. It happens sometimes at the restaurant, too.
Yeah. That little piece of cheese seems thinner than the other pieces of cheese. Okay, but yeah, that looks pretty good, though. And it's a pretty good size.
And then you can brush the outside with butter or Parmesan or what have you.
Well, if I brush it with butter, I have to add that to the total calculations.
Oh, fine.
But
I'm just saying you can.
Yeah, I think it would be better if I did, so I think I will. I will add like a tablespoon of butter. I doubt the people in Round Table are as meticulous when they place their pepperoni. They're probably just like, pfft.
I was, and then I got yelled at for taking too long to make a pizza.
I am not at all surprised. He's very meticulous when it comes to cooking. He really takes his time to like be very precise. So as my husband instructed me, running some melted butter along the edge before putting the parm on is advisable. So this is 2 tablespoons total of butter. I'm definitely not going to use all 2 right now. Probably use no more than 1 tablespoon right now and the other tablespoon on the other pizza, so I'll have to factor this also into the cost. But definitely worth it. I'm not going to skimp on this crust part, because I usually don't like the crusts of pizza at pizzeria chains. But stuffed crust is great, because it's like cheesy breadsticks. And now our Parmigiano, imported from Italy. And I'm going to try to not get a lot of it on the parchment. And any Parmigiano that is left, and there will be some left, will go on the rest of the pizza, which will be really nice.
Asiago is another good cheese for this application.
There! Pizza, pizza! So you pull the rack out with my very, very hot pizza stone. The oven is extremely hot. And then I like to put the cutting board over the stone and then lower the parchment that way. And it's different when your pizza's twice as heavy. Yeah, I did it! Yay! Ooh, it's already sizzling. Lovely. And then you make sure that it's all on the stone. And then slide it in and shut it. Usually they're thinner crust and I bake it for like 7 minutes, but since this one's thicker crust, it'll take longer. I don't know. I'm going to check it after 7 minutes and see how it looks. So it has been 7.5 minutes and I'm just checking on the pizza. It smells wonderful. It looks pretty awesome. It's bubbling away. I don't know how done that crust is yet. We're actually getting some color on the bottom, so I think this will be done pretty soon. And I just grab the corner of the parchment paper, because that's not hot, and slide it onto the cutting board. And then I just slide the parchment off.
Round Table's new stuffed crust crispy pepperoni and bacon pizza. It's bacony, it's cheesy, and it's pepperoni-y.
Oh, that's divine. I done good. So it was really good. It worked out really well. And I was really relieved because usually when I make pizzas at home, they're about 12-inch diameter, which is the size of a medium round table pizza. But this pizza was a 14-inch diameter, which made it a large pizza. So we're comparing apples to apples here. I'm relieved. I thought for a moment I was gonna have to use pi r squared and figure out like what percent of the size of the pizza I made. But I made the equivalent of a large bacon pepperoni stuffed crust pizza from Round Table. So let's go over the numbers now for how much everything cost. So I used 4 cups of King Arthur bread flour. A whole 5-pound bag is $4.95, and it's about 19 cups equivalent. So since I used 4 cups, I used $1.04 worth of flour. This is for 2 pizzas, by the way. I used 2 tablespoons in the crust of that really good expensive olive oil. It's $22 for the entire 33.8 ounce bottle. And so that was 64 cents just in olive oil in the crust for the 2 pizzas. I used 2 1/4 teaspoons of yeast for the crust for both of the pizzas. And it's a 4-ounce jar of yeast that I bought for $6.39. Each one of those jars is the equivalent of 16 packets of yeast, and each packet is the equivalent of $2 2 1/4 teaspoons of yeast. So $6.39 divided by 16 is 40 cents of yeast for the 2 crusts. I also used 2 teaspoons of salt, which is kind of negligible. It's like a penny. Salt is very, very cheap. So that was the crust for both of the pizzas. And then for the toppings, for both pizzas, I used a whole pound of bacon for $5.99. Again, that was sort of like medium grade, like supermarket generic bacon. It wasn't like gourmet, really good bacon. I used 2 sticks of the Hormel pepperoni on 2 of the pizzas. So that was $2.99. And then the cheese for both of the pizzas, I used half of that block of mozzarella cheese. The whole block was $7.99, so half of that is $4. I used half of the block of the fontina cheese. The whole fontina cheese was $7.49, so the amount that I used was $3.74. And then I used 2/5 of that block of Parmesan cheese. The whole block was $8.99, so the 2/5 of it was $3.60. And then I also used 2 tablespoons of butter spread around the outside of the 2 pizzas for that Parmesan on the crust. And that is 19 cents for the 2 pizzas. And then for the sauce, the can of tomatoes was $1.05. The tablespoon of olive oil for the sauce was 33 cents. The tablespoon of Italian seasoning was 3 cents. The teaspoon of red pepper flakes was 1 cent. So the total sauce was $1.42, but I only wound up using half, even a little bit less than half, but I'm just gonna go ahead and be generous and say that I used half of the sauce. That first pizza I made could have definitely used a little more sauce, so I'm gonna say that I used half of that sauce. So that is 71 cents for the sauce. So that means that the total, both pizzas, total 2 large homemade pepperoni and bacon stuffed crust Round Table pizzas at home is, drumroll, $23.30. If you will recall, our bill was $22.09 to eat that one pizza in Round Table. It would have been $2 cheaper if we had ordered it and gone and picked it up and then driven home and eaten it. We could have saved $2 because of the tax, but you know, I wasn't even factoring drinks into the equation either. Like, it probably would have cost us $1.50 each to have a drink, whereas at home, like a glass of soda from a 2-liter bottle is no more than 40 cents total. Anyway, point being, without the sodas, it only costs like $1.28 more to make 1 whole more pizza. So basically, I can make this pizza for half the price that we got it at Round Table at its promotional price. So I done pretty good. Now, time to point out the elephant in the room. I don't think you can even get this pizza at Round Table anymore. I think it was just for January and February. Now, we thought initially it was like the promotional price of $19.99 and then it would become more expensive. If you look at their other specialty pizzas, like the Guinevere's whatever and the Wumbo Combo or whatever, the large pizzas that are specialty pizzas are all $23 at the restaurant. I think they're like $22.90 technically, but basically $23. And if you eat them in the restaurant, that's going to be $25 because of the tax. So if you're comparing it to a non-promotional price round table pizza, it's less than half the price. So I had a lot of fun making this pizza, recreating it at home, and seeing how much cheaper I could make it for. And I gotta say, I really enjoy making stuffed crust pizza at home. The quality of the crust, the bread on the outside, it was so soft and chewy and delicious. Like, I think I might do that again, actually. And my husband was really happy when I told him that because he loves stuffed crust pizza. If you have any ideas of what popular fast food or chain restaurant meals you want to see me try to recreate at home for less money, leave those suggestions in the comments or send them to me. You can add me on Facebook at Sarah K Loves Food and leave me suggestions there, or just follow me. I tend to post pictures of my food there. Also, thank you to Gina. She is my sole patron on Patreon. I have a Patreon. I haven't been advertising it much on this channel because I tend to give like advice on how to save money on food and stuff. And if you want to save money, don't support YouTubers on Patreon. But if you have the money to spare, if you're enjoying the content that I create on this channel, I do have a Patreon. You can check it out. I currently, for this channel specifically, I have a $4 level. The Patreon is mostly associated with my main YouTube channel, which is about Japanese anime translation. But if you're interested in supporting just this channel, you have the means. There's a $4 level for you. So bye for now, and I will see you on St. Patrick's Day with a special midweek video.